Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of From the Cheap Seats podcast. I am your host, Chris Branson. This podcast comes to you from a military veteran's point of view. Uh, Not that my military service was anything special, nor am I dissing it, but I'm kind of giving you a perspective from somebody who has seen things, done things, and you know, I've been a wrestling fan for 40 years. So, if you're tuning in for the first time, this is, I think, my eighth episode. Usually, I wait till after Busted Open every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday mornings to record, just so I can hear the scuttlebutt of the day and the enlightened perspectives of Hall of Famers and lifelong fans. Uh, Shout out to Busted Open. Uh, you know, Member of the Busted Open Central Texas chapter. Also, if you are on the internet, put out there the hashtag Busted Open 24/7 along with the at Busted Open Serious account on Twitter, and let the powers that be see that you want a 24/7 professional wrestling serious channel. With the first topic today, um, kind of we're gonna go to a mark moment, or the difference between smart marks and dumb marks, the internet wrestling community, and why do you need to argue with people who have done it probably longer than most people have been alive, in regards to the ones that call in, ones that wanted to go argue. So I think it was Monday or Tuesday. I was listening to Busted Open. It's going to be kind of a Busted Open heavy first couple segments. Um, I was listening to Busted Open. Of course, Bully Ray's on there recapping certain things, and they were taking calls. And you gotta love the Dave LaGreca rants right after these things are said sometimes, because Dave LaGreca went smooth off on a guy, and it was based around mainly, and like I said, Monday, Tuesday. So Jade Cargill, who the fan ended up arguing about, Jade Cargill is a SmackDown talent. So she wrestles on Fridays. She doesn't wrestle on Monday unless there's some SmackDown Raw crossover interaction or NXT, same as I just said. And she got brought up in a conversation. And the thing about it was specifically that the fan felt that Jade was getting presented not differently in WWE, but almost similarly to AEW. In AEW, Jade was still very green, still very wet behind the ears, to use an old time vernacular or metaphor. Uh, and we will be talking about metaphor today when I do the NXT recap. But, and I say this with all sincerity, Jade Cargill, AEW, is very much different than Jade Cargill, WWE. Why do I say that? Well, Jade was very 1-2 dimensional while in AEW. Like I said, she was still green, very vanilla. To pardon the pun, pardon the metaphor here. Uh, there was still things in her game that she was learning, but she was getting thrown into the situations instead of, and this is no diss on people like QT Marshall and Cody Rhodes and others who have helped train her. It's not. But going from AEW to WWE, being able to be in the performance center with Robbie Brookside and Sarah Del Rey or Sarah D'Amato and Fit Finley, Norman Smiley. The list of names that are coaching down there goes on. I mean, you've got some of the best British, American, international talent that are, that come in and help train the young men and women that we see on the screen. Now, Jade Cargill is also 31 years old. So, like some famous wrestlers in the past, namely Diamond Dallas Page, um, she's gotten a later start, so she's had to accelerate in a sense her ascension up the learning tree. And like I said, Fan tried to argue with Bully Ray of all people. Now, if you've ever listened to Bully Ray, Bubba Ray Dudley, whatever you want to call him, if you've ever listened to the man speak about how to book, how to present, the man is wise beyond his years, and he'll even admit he's still learning things because professional wrestling, where you're a fan or a talent or a manager or a community, the person, the commentary, the people that are communicating what you see on TV, the actions being presented on a television screen, and building the story, the drama, the psychology of the match. Why would you argue with that man? Why would you argue with any seasoned, long-term wrestling veteran who probably knows how to book a match better than you, even if it was on a PlayStation 5 or an Xbox Series 1 or whatever they call the Xboxes these days? As you can tell, I'm a PlayStation 5 guy. I've never owned but one Xbox, and I like pawned that thing off like 2 weeks into owning it. So, and it was the original Xbox, by the way. But we as fans need to shut up and listen sometimes and allow ourselves to take in what is being presented on TV. Take in what is being presented in regards to the whole entire product. Doesn't matter the company, just more so you learn more by watching and listening than you do by talking. You let these legends and these teachers and these people who have seen, for lack of a better vernacular, goes back to my military service, the battle lines and the battlegrounds that have been drawn and laid out for them to write the story during that wrestling war. And I'm going to get to, funny enough, Wrestle War. A certain talent making mention of Wrestle War 92. But we'll get into that when we talk about SmackDown. But it also goes to the Autographarotzi, as I like to call it. The Autographarotzi. That's better. Because I had it written down on my little call sheet here. Something absolutely crazy. I was listening to a snippet of the Undertaker's podcast, or the interview that Undertaker did Monday on Busted Open. And, and it goes back to also seeing people, swarm and disturb these men and women. Yes, they are celebrities, athletes, whatever you want to call them, performance artists, doesn't matter. These people are trying to get about their day and get things done. Whether it's connecting flights, going home, their bodies are beat up. They're trying to go do laundry and catch the next town when they're trying to go to their hotels or whatever. And I have always been content. I think the only thing I was ever owned that is autographed by a professional wrestler is Kurt Angle's autobiography. And honestly, I'm happy with that being the only autograph I've ever gotten from a professional wrestler. Because it's Kurt Angle. But in the same, something as simple as a handshake. When I was coming back from technical school training, which is teaching you your job or whatever, depends on what you call it. Army calls it MOS, Air Force calls it an AFSC. The Marine Corps, like the Army calls it an MOS, and the Navy calls it a rate. I think the Coast Guard is a rate, and Space Force is an occupation now. I don't know. I was Air Force, so I mean, and the Space Force delved off from us. But needless to say, if you're bugging me while I'm trying to catch my next flight, or you're bugging me while I'm trying to get home to my wife and kids, or husband and kids, or your partner, I might not be so pleasant. And I, like I said with the handshake, I got a handshake at the formerly Fort Hood, now Fort Cavazos. A celebration was held back when 4th ID was returning home from their first stint in Iraq. 4th ID being the infantry division formerly located there that caught Saddam Hussein during the course of post-combat operation related search and capture of former Ba'ath Party individuals. Well, anyhow, two biggest things of that day that stuck out in my mind was Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Undertaker. Now, they were coming in later from the talent that did show up there. I believe it was Lita, Trish Stratus, Shawn Michaels, Kurt Angle, and the coach, Jonathan Coachman. So if Jonathan Coachman ever watches this, shout out to Jonathan Coachman. He has Behind the Turnbuckle, I believe, is his podcast. Talks about old wrestling stories from when he was a part of it in WWE. But the thing that mattered or meant more to me than an autograph was getting to shake their hands. And I was actually leaving to go home. I think I had a few days before I even had to report back to my forward duty station. And getting to meet, Stone Cold Steve Austin for and The Undertaker for all of about probably 45 seconds to a minute, getting to shake their hands, that's what stuck in my mind. That experience, that moment was more prevalent to me and meant more to me than ever getting anything autographed or, taking a picture. It was something that 20 years later now I can remember. I mean, yeah, it happened 20 years ago last month. But lay off these people. They're people too. They're individuals. Yes, we pay our money to watch them. It's performance theater with violence and story and drama and humor. Leave them alone. They need a break too. They're just there to get away from us sometimes. So just leave them be, because I'm waiting for the day that somebody does something so absolutely untoward, one of these talents, and they get the what for physically versus verbally. But that being said, going back to Undertaker, he said that a guy sent his child over to have an autograph signed. Now, The Undertaker admits when he sent the picture back, it had a not so pleasant message on it. But ultimately, it was a lesson learned for the fan who just could not accept the word no. Moving on, because this is going to be a long podcast if I don't. We're going to go to Monday Night Raw. Now, Monday Night Raw was a pretty decently stacked card as far as the segments, how they meant, so on and so forth. A week prior, I was thinking that Braun Strowman's return, was meant to face Priest in a short feud, whatever, before it's McIntyre and Priest that clash at the castle. Boy, was I wrong. I mean, JD McDonough going after him. We'll see how that goes. It's not going to be pretty, by the way. Heck, it might even be a match that can showcase on speed. Braun Strowman chokeslams JD McDonough and done in like 30 seconds. Anyhow, starting with Damian Priest and Drew McIntyre. Now, mind you, Drew McIntyre started the show. He was out there, ballyhooing about his most recent complaints, whether it's Punk or Priest or whatever's pissing off Drew McIntyre that day. But Damian Priest comes out there, and I think we're seeing sort of a babyface turn. And you see it in his more stoic, territorial attitude, especially when he went back to address Carlito's appearance in their little space back there, their clubhouse. And Priest lit McIntyre up. Now, we all said a couple weeks ago, oh, Priest's promo kind of felt flat, one-dimensional. Priest pretty much cut down Drew McIntyre and told him, hey, anytime, anywhere, big boy. I was shocked at how good Priest, with what he said, got the point across. Yes, we didn't see any action from Drew McIntyre, and Damian Priest didn't really get involved too much in Raw. But beyond that segment, mind you, McIntyre is dealing with a healing fracture, I believe, in his right elbow. And Priest, probably did a dark match, like right after the show. But I am waiting for Clash at the Castle, Drew McIntyre's homecoming. And I guarantee you it is going to be a spectacle when it shows there in Scotland in the middle of June. Next was the Io Sky Shayna Baszler Queen of the Ring qualifier. This match was just what you expected from Io Sky and Shayna Baszler. It was hard hitting. They are remarkably stiff with each other. They have a knowledge of each other, but I believe back from Stardom when Io Shirai and Shayna Baszler would compete against each other. And these women, they leave it all out there every time they slap hands with each other. Shayna Baszler loses. Sky is moving on to what they're calling the regional. I shout out to 313 Mark on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, to the regional final, the Raw regional final, where Io will face eventually the person we will talk about soon. I can see them putting the crown on Io's head, but does Damage Control really need it? Anyhow, moving on, you got another 4.5 star classic out of Kofi Kingston when it comes to Gunther, the Ring General. I'm pretty sure I'm going to get sliced up for how I pronounced the Ring General's name. But of course, Gunther, what can you say about Gunther? Gunther, that man is just, he's there, to face. He is, his world championship reign might actually last twice as long as his world heavyweight championship reign might last twice as long as his intercontinental title reign. So let's see here, 666 days, so 1,320 days. I mean, but that's Roman Reigns-esque era time and amount. So we'll see. I mean, I don't think they're going to do that with the World Heavyweight Championship unless they're going to make him wrestle all 1,300 days against somebody during the course of every 30 days the championship's supposed to be defended. Kofi Kingston put up a valiant effort, who actually went after Gunther's knees and tried to chop down the big Austrian redwood. But at the end of the day, of course, the Ring General Gunther prevails. So Gunther moves to the Raw Regional Final against who's somebody we will mention later. We will talk about Yeet. Going from there to Bronson Reed and Akira Tozawa. Now, you knew this was going to be a squash match. I mean, it's starting to show the eventual fracture of the Alpha Academy and potentially the return of an American Alpha or Team Gable-esque faction, a la Team Angle, which, as I've lived up to saying that Kurt Angle will probably return as a heel manager if needed, or a heel advisor if needed, to put this alleged supergroup of Chad Gable, Brutus and Julius Creed, and possibly even Ivy now does a heel turn on Maxine. So we'll see, but not trying to, put the cart before the horse here. Bronson Reed is, if it isn't Chad Gable, Bronson Reed is hop, step, and skip away from a future Intercontinental Championship reign. I mean, Bronson Reed is probably one of their hardest working big men. He is consistent. He is a workhorse. He may just have a few moves that, but if you've ever got a chance to watch Bronson Reed or Jonah when he was in New Japan, dude is uber talented. He can make magic whether you're a cruiserweight or a super heavyweight. He's that good. Look up his stuff with Ivar, Sheamus, others since he's been back in WWE. Tozawa, I mean, I love that he's a foil and a babyface foil at that. But, Akira Tozawa was hired back when they were trying to highlight the cruiserweights. I kind of wish there was a way to reignite the cruiserweight division. But ultimately, do you really have the talent anymore? You could from NXT, but a lot of the names that were presented and brought in for the Cruiserweight Classic have long since gone. Kind of wish Pac would make it back to WWE, but I don't know. It would be nice. It would and hopefully he would get to keep the bastard moniker. sometimes it's nice when WWE allows talent to keep their names or keep their images, stuff that they've had before while they've been on these runs with other companies. But moving on to Lyra Valkyria and Zoe Stark. Now, going into Raw, I thought it was going to be Zoe Stark versus Shayna Baszler, kind of the setup to break them away from each other. I think Zoe Stark, and I'm a Stark mark, openly admitted every day. Love me some Lyra Valkyria. Think her work in NXT and in NXT UK was spectacular. But I'm not the one with the pencil, the book, or anything else. Stark and Valkyria put together a really good match. Like I said, a lot of these matches these past weeks when it came to the King of the Ring were pay-per-view-esque, especially the ones with the house shows. You know, trying to draw more in regards to house show crowds. And they're remarkably smaller than a SmackDown, Raw, or PLE showing when it comes to certain things. I mean, tell that to CM Punk, who CM Punk drew, I think, 15,000 at Madison Square Garden, 10,000 at the Forum during the Christmas shows. I might be wrong. I'm spitballing here. But this match set up a meeting between Io Sky and Lyra Valkyria for the Raw Women's Regional Final. Going from there, we had a match between Otis and Sami Zayn. Now, Chad Gable, still playing into this show, told Otis to go out there and show him why he's a member of the Academy, that, you know, go take out Sami Zayn. Otis, if you didn't told him not to talk and you just sent him out there to wrestle as a heel, could probably be a monster heel in WWE. He's got that kind of look where his short and stocky nature would deceive people into thinking he's somebody they can get over on. But in reality, if you have ever heard or seen him wrestle and know his background, don't sleep on Otis. Anyhow, Otis went out there, did his babyface shtick. Sami Zayn prevailed, as we expected he would, especially with the match coming in Saudi against Chad Gable and Bronson Reed. Gable came out there and tried to chastise Sami Zayn. Or not Sami Zayn, excuse me, Otis. Sami came to Otis's defense and put a haluva boot right up Chad Gable's head. I believe Bronson Reed came out and attacked Sami after Sami had left the ring, but needless to say, yeah. I'm not going to talk too much about the Fatal 4-Way Tag Team match because I just think that was a hot mess. You know, Awesome Truth, they're going to end up carrying these championships for at least 6 months. So I really honestly forgot about who was a part of that match. And I apologize. But I believe it was JD McDonough and Finn Balor. That's right. It was JD McDonough and Finn Balor that eventually won the match. That's how forgetful it was. I remember more of the interaction after the fact when you had Strowman talking to the Creeds and Ivy Nile, and McDonough comes up and tries to front Braun Strowman. Like I said, while David, has the stone and knocks down Goliath most times, Braun Strowman is the kind of Goliath. It's going to take your breakfast, your lunch, your dinner, and probably a midnight snack to beat him or to chop him down. So I'm looking forward to the car wreck that feud or that small run between each other is going to present. Let's see here. And then the main event. And it was the right match to put in the main event. Now, we could have put Gunther and Kofi Kingston in the main event, and TVs probably would have gotten shut off because it's something we've seen before. But throwing Jey Uso and Ilya Dragunov, two very different styles. Dragunov's very hard hitting. Jey is fast moving, a high flyer, and a master of the super kick. Ilya comes at you full speed with both technicality and brutality. That's Ilya's bread and butter. Is he goes 100 miles until he hears the 1, 2, 3. They put together a really good match. The chemistry was there. I mean, like I said, differing styles, but in the end of the day, it all painted on that canvas as it should have. And I get the hints, and this is what the Triple H era does better than anything else, to where, it makes you beg if we could build a time machine and go back to post 2003 and just let Triple H book professional wrestling all the way up till now. Probably be WWE would have never had the down period that they ever had if Triple H had the pencil and he had the people that are under him that think like him. Don't tell him yes sir like others did to Vince. Really kind of give it from every perspective. And one of the things also that I like about the Triple H era of professional wrestling in WWE is the fact that we are not ignoring, with the exception of probably AEW, we are not ignoring prior histories to the talent. Like I said, the Stardom tie-ins for some of their women talent. New Japan for Tama Tonga, Tonga Loa, the Good Brothers, Finn Balor, AJ Styles, Cody Rhodes. I'm eventually expecting when Nick Aldis finally potentially gets back in the ring and gets into a ring for WWE, that there's going to be some hearkening back to a certain NWA Heavyweight Championship match. As you notice, there's Easter eggs all throughout later on SmackDown's little review here. The setup between Cody and Nick. Something's coming. Just gotta sit back and watch. But the right person went over because Gunther and Ilya are too good a match to just be thrown on free TV. Why do I say that? Because anytime that they faced each other where it was a takeover, or I believe they had a match in NXT before Gunther went up to the main roster in 22, that they deliver. It's close as 5-star as 5-star can get with those two. So putting that in a stateside audience, in front of a stateside audience, or even internationally, which I had talked to somebody the other day, a friend of mine who also watches professional wrestling, probably not as, and he goes, it's kind of sad that they're not doing Gunther and Ilya next week on Raw. And I was like, no, 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 no. I think, and I told him they're saving it up for Bash in Berlin. That, or at least Money in the Bank in Toronto. I could see an Ilya Dragunov or Gunther being Money in the Bank, the Money in the Bank winner. And then, obviously go on to face Cody or go on to face whoever the WWE heavyweight champion is at the time, the world heavyweight champion. I can see either or winning, but the singles match between those two, you don't put that on free TV. I'm sorry. I mean, have we gotten it on quote unquote free TV? Yes, with NXT, but NXT is where Gunther and Ilya built their WWE chops. I mean, both experienced, seasoned professional wrestlers, but WWE is a little bit of a different monster when it comes to their style of how they present on TV. So, and I'll go into that again later in AEW with certain things that was said the other day on another podcast. Let's see here. Jey Uso versus Gunther. I could see Jey winning this, but ultimately, I think Gunther versus Orton is the route they're going. You know, the most established Raw superstar currently versus, and that's not to put Drew McIntyre and Sheamus and Damian Priest and CM Punk in a corner and say, hey, but the most resumed superstar right now to put in those two spots in Saudi Arabia come next Saturday. I'm going to go Gunther, but I would not sleep on Jey. If they're really serious about Jey's singles run, don't sleep on Jey. Moving on to NXT, show opens with an attack on Noam Dar. Now, obviously, Noam Dar is in a feud with Trick Williams and a side feud, metaphor-wise, with Javon Evans. This really amazing, phenomenal talent that came from the Indies. I think his name was Jay Malachi. And just since he's been there, has just shown out with his myriad of high flying as well as ground mat wrestling when he does have to put that together. Of course, metaphor gets involved early in the show, but we're leading up to finding out who it all was attacking the people on this episode of NXT. Next, we move into an Izzy Dame, Kiana James. Now, Kiana James just got moved up to Monday Night Raw. As you see, she's there to adjudicate. In truth, sometimes certain terms aren't PG. I got it. Thank you, R-Truth. But anyhow, Kiana James is telling Izzy Dame, hey, what we've put together, keep it running, and I will see you when it's your time to come up and join me. Cool. That was the perfect hand this class of NXT off to the class that's now being displayed on TV. Going from there, you had the match with Izzy Dame and Sol Ruca for a spot in the Women's North American Championship ladder match. Two very good female talents. Sol Ruca is honestly one of the future pieces of NXT, especially when Roxanne and Cora move north moved to Stanford from Orlando. And honestly, I could see them putting it on Jada Parker, but I think ultimately who is going to be the first North American champion on the female side or women's side, it's going to be Sol Ruka. Sol Ruka hits another amazing, beautiful honestly, Sol Ruka's Soul Snatcher is kind of like the RKO. She can hit it from nowhere, out of nowhere, and it's beautiful. I mean, she does really well as a professional wrestling talent. Really well. Um, we move on to Ava Rain, the GM of Monday night, or excuse me, Tuesday night NXT. In there with Tony D'Angelo, Luca Crucifino, Stax Lorenzo, and Adriana Rizzo. And Ava's grilling them about, okay, where's Damon Kemp and Miles Bourne? Now, mind you, last week we saw them getting kidnapped and probably beat up. They got released somewhere, notified Charlie Dempsey they were coming, hopefully in time to be there for his Heritage Cup match with Tony D'Angelo in the main event. But, you know, Ava's like, well, look, I got to set a precedent. I got to fine you. Of course, they hand over the fine, and it's probably a number larger than what the fine was supposed to be. You know, Rizzo goes, this will help your office here look better than it ever did. I got it. And that's like the worst Italian or worst mobster accent I'm ever going to put together. So that's never going to happen again. But you're seeing Tony D being the eventual either top babyface or heel in NXT coming. Not discounting what I'm going to say later about this stuff in NXT, but anyhow, moving on to OTM, Out of the Mud. Bronco Nima and Lucian Price versus Enofe and Malik Blade. Idris Enofe and Malik Blade. It was a squash match for OTM. OTM, I feel bad for Blade and Enofe. They are very good talents. They are very good in ring. But as a tag team, they get fed to literally every spotlight tag team in the company. You know, they don't deserve to be enhancement talents, but that's what they feel like. And obviously, with OTM, you no longer have Scripps, as I believe Scripps is actually leaving the company the beginning of June. Reggie, I think, will get somewhere with a company that will maximize his talent and his worth. I don't think he's unable to get over in WWE. It's just he's been in some really bad gimmicks, and that's more to blame Vince McMahon than it is Triple H. I think the Scripps thing helped him, in a sense, kind of show a broader side of his personality other than a sommelier of Carmella. But, you know, they've simplified it down to a Brooks and Jensen-esque with Fallon Henley, you know, mini faction or mini group, which is nice. It's, you know, you don't have that many moving parts anymore. It just keeps it within the family per se. Yeah. Never again. Anyhow, going from there, we have Oral Mensa and Jakara Jackson and Lash Legend checking on Noam Dar. And of course, Mensa and Dar and Jackson are all thinking, this has to be Trick Williams or this has to be Javon Evans. And you got a perplexed Lash Legend who I think is turning babyface anyhow. She's splitting for Metaphor. I don't see her long for Metaphor. Um, Going, yeah, I don't think it's who you think it is. Almost pretty much is how Lash Legends sounded during that segment. Going into there, we're moving from the backstage medical room segment to in reaction between Lash Legend and Ivy Nile. Now, Ivy Nile is a Raw talent that was nice enough to have done the combine with SmackDown talent Michin as well. Seeing where they fit in that combine for said women's North American Championship, this is one of those matches to get another spot in that ladder match. It was a really good match between the two. Ivy Nile is showing that her growth and her talent to entertain and stand out is ever present, and she will only get better with time. Lash Legend, who admittedly I wasn't a Lash fan at the beginning of things, but as I've sat and watched Lash over time, she is really good. She, for a taller woman, and a lot of times taller women wrestlers get treated like the giants, the Omoses and the Andres of the world, and what Big Show should have been as a special attraction. I I like the fact that she is not pigeonholed or pinned into that she gets to expand her repertoire every time she gets into the ring, whether it's on TV or at the Performance Center. The Lash Legend goes over Ivy now and is headed to Las Vegas to Battleground to face Sol Ruca and 4 other women. You had Carly Bright and Lola Vice. Lola Vice came out with Shayna Baszler. Good little match. Lola Vice went over. And then obviously Carmen Petrovic or Petrovich. I don't want to butcher the pronunciation of her last name. And Natalia come out to get a piece of Shayna and Lola from Spring Breaking. They've got a tag team match coming. It's going to be really good. And if you watch the spoilers, I'm not spoiling next week's NXT episode, but Battleground is going to be very interesting after the results of said match next week. That's all I'm going to say. Next, you've got, of course, Javon Evans, one of the alleged attackers of Noam Dar versus Ora Mensa. Now, that match doesn't need any explanation, doesn't need description. It is 2 really badass high flyers, fast-moving talents that win against each other. Javon Evans, in the end of the day, gets over. Obviously, still assisting his ascension as a top babyface. And Mensa, I was more a fan of his in NXT UK. I think had they kept that, and the pandemic hurt it quite a bit, obviously. He should have gone over and been what they needed long term there for as a babyface. Now he does great as a heel. He does great at Metaphor, but it's really holding him back from being able to show you how good he is. Which I hope, like I said, they're splitting Metaphor, I think. So we're going to get to see Oro Mensa do his thing probably eventually. Now, moving there, prior to the main event, you had a promo segment between Wesley Obafemi, Ivar, and Josh Briggs. Now, Josh Briggs thinks he's owed still a one-on-one match with Obafemi. Of course, Ivar feels he's right in the picture to challenge Obafemi again for the North American Championship. And then, of course, Wes Lee, despite all the stuff that Wes Lee dealt with when he lost the North American Championship the last time, uh, feels not entitled, but a right to be at the top of the ladder to challenge Obafemi for the title that he had made his niche in NXT history with. It was a very solid promo from all of them, even Josh Briggs. Josh Briggs kind of teetering that line between babyface and heel. Ivar, had Ivar not gotten injured, probably another classic between Femi and Ivar. Then we head to the main event. Tony D'Angelo versus Charlie Dempsey. Now, as people know, Charlie Dempsey is the son of, I believe his title is Vice President of Global Talent Acquisitions and Evaluations, and the gentleman villain, his lordship, William Regal, former King of the Ring, by the way. And Charlie Dempsey is a very accomplished wrestler in the Indies. He is very much his dad's child. The way he cuts promos, the way his facials are, the way he reacts in ring to certain things, you can tell he's a Regal. And considering No Quarter Catch Crew was supposed to be a play on former members, former faction in Evolve, I believe it's called Catch Point. Without having him anymore, it really kind of fractures the ability to take them serious. Now, if you found somebody else who is replete in catch wrestling or MMA style mat wrestling, then yeah, it would have made more sense to keep this group together. I think it's going to eventually break them up. But now, and Tony D'Angelo showed that he can go during a British Rounds match. Tony D'Angelo beats Charlie Dempsey 2-1 and is now your brand new NXT Heritage Cup champion. So it'll be interesting to see what the D'Angelo family does with the cup. I believe it'll help broaden on TV the appearance of Tony D'Angelo's wrestling repertoire beyond big moves, spot moves, whatever. And it will finally break Charlie Dempsey away from No Quarter Catch Crew and allow him to be what NXT expected, say, a Timothy Thatcher to be, an emotionless badass that just goes in there and puts together really good matches, mainly technical, but probably a little outside his skill set in regards to other areas, but ultimately somebody that they can eventually put a World Heavyweight Championship or excuse me, the NXT Championship or the North American Championship. Now, I eventually think that there will be a third men's singles title in NXT, but I mean, it'd be the perfect time for NXT to put together a television championship, since they're moving to the CW. Then we see at the end of the night who more than likely was the attacker of said Noam Dar. Joe and Mark Coffey and Wolfgang, affectionately known as Gallus. It's going to be something to watch Gallus over the next coming weeks. Now, Gallus was allegedly supposed to receive a main roster move up due to their assisting Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson in preparing for his WrestleMania matches, or his WrestleMania match at obviously WrestleMania, the night one of WrestleMania 40. Right now, they're still better served in NXT. You get them a little bit of time, even if you're not going to put the tag championships or any singles championship on Joe. At least allow them to build their resume so that when they go to the main show, people know who they are. You know, if they go to Raw, they can pair with another Scotsman and give Drew McIntyre kind of like a Scottish mobman kind of group. You know, Gallus go after the tag titles, the Intercontinental title, the World title. If they don't already possess it by then. Just spitballing ideas here. But we see Wesley, Josh Briggs, and Ivar laid out in the back of the Performance Center, and Gallus standing atop. You know, what's the saying? Gallus boys on top. Probably a hint of things to come. Moving on real quick to AEW. Now, kind of felt AEW was dull, but kind of looking over, watching it again, it set the right tone for Double or Nothing in a lot of the matches that were tied together. First off, you know, Swerve is trying to tie a bow on his split for the Mogul Embassy. And it's interesting enough that when Swerve came out to open the show, a certain person was missing. Paging Prince Nana. Prince Nana, please report to Swerve Strickland. Is Nana going to side with the Mogul Embassy and the Gates of Agony and Brian Cage, or is he going to stick with Swerve? It'll be interesting to see. Swerve and Cage. Swerve obviously getting the win over Brian Cage in a really hard-fought match between the two. Cage is a powerhouse, so you expect him to with that match, showcase that. But Swerve can show you different ways of beating you. He's shown that over the last couple months with Samoa Joe and Hangman Page and others he's wrestled. Eventually leads up to a post-match segment with the Patriarchy and leads to Nick Wayne busting open Swerve Strickland right above the eye with a picture of Swerve's family. Now, I get it. I'm not a fan per se of this overused, and I think it is overused inflection of the family. I mean, you've got Mama Wayne and Nick Wayne, Buddy Wayne's widow and son. You've got Luchasaurus, or Killswitch as he's known now. The go after your family and in every feud kind of thing, it's going to start getting old. Christian, you know, should branch his family out to set amongst themselves a standard, like, you know, Killswitch going after the TNT title again, and Nick Wayne going after a Continental Crown or ROH Pure or whatever you want to do. I mean, it doesn't need to be, hey, go jump this guy so that I have an advantage. No. Swerve, I think, is going to end up beating Christian Cage at Double or Nothing, but we're a week and a day out from said match, so we will see come Sunday the 26th. Mox and Danielson, Blackpool Combat Club versus Jeff Cobb and Kyle Fletcher, the Don Callis family. Now it's nice to see Jeff Cobb back in the States working for AEW. Mainly, you get to see him on New Japan Pro Wrestling. And if anybody knows who Jeff Cobb is, he's an accomplished Olympic wrestler who came into professional wrestling in the Indies, into New Japan. The guy can put some matches together. I believe he was part of Osprey's United Empire at one point in time. But they come in a normal Mox and Danielson versus anybody match, which it's going to be really hard hitting on the Mox side of things. It's going to be very either technical or high flying on the Danielson side of things. So it was a good setup match for them to celebrate at the end of the match, and a certain talent that is looking to go after Jon Moxley's IWGP Heavyweight Championship. Konosuke Takeshita, but I yeah, I butchered that. My bad. Anyhow, Moxley versus Takeshita is going to be a very interesting match because it is an eliminator. I think it should just be a flat out World Heavyweight Championship match. Why not, Tony? Why not? Next, we move on to Okada versus Harwood. Now, of course, Kazuchika Okada. I'm going to do this the rest of the show, probably just breaking down their names so I don't butcher them. Versus Dax Harwood. Dax Harwood, he's a great tag team wrestler, but he wasn't going to be booked to win against Okada. I mean, maybe they're setting up for AEW to pull out the surprise win at Double or Nothing in Anarchy in the Arena, but we'll see. I don't know if that's the route they're going. If it is, cool. If not, Harwood is really good in the ring, but this is Okada. You're not gonna make somebody that they pay almost $5 million a year just job to Dax Harwood. It ain't gonna happen. Maybe one day Okada will, give the deuce to Dax, but Wednesday was not the day. Okada goes over Harwood, and of course leads to the after match encounter with FTR and the new Elite and other members of Team AEW. You've got the Young Bucks, the EVPs, Matthew and Nicholas Jackson, facing off against Matt Sydal and Christopher Daniels. Now, a little side note here. Christopher Daniels and Sydal have been tag teaming, Matt Sydal being the former WWE's Evan Bourne, had been tag teaming off TV against other AEW talent. Last week, Christopher Daniels and Christopher Daniels is an accomplished, amazing 50-plus-year-old man who's working backstage in talent relations for AEW. Now, mind you, this was kayfabe, what they did after the match, firing Christopher Daniels, the Fallen Angel. But, all these pieces that they're laying eventually are going to lead to something. Christopher Daniels gets dismissed, discharged, fired, for lack of a better term. Of course, Nick and Matthew are just wrecking up shop in AEW, right under Tony Khan's nose. It's going to be interesting, this storyline and how it turns and twists and it makes sense. You had Timeless Tony Storm versus Harley Cameron of the Outcast. Now, mind you, Tony Storm was a former Outcast before going into this Timeless gimmick. Harley Cameron is pretty much the henchwoman of Saraya. Now that Ruby has also left the group, and Ruby is momming it up right now with Angelo Parker. Harley Cameron actually looked surprisingly good. She's a great singer, but she looked surprisingly good in the ring. I am digging more Tony Storm's harkening back to the 30s and 40s era female wrestlers. The way she has colored her hair gray or platinum. Her outfit choices are very old school, back in the day Mildred Burke era-esque ring attire. I kind of think we're slowly seeing a Tony Storm face turn. Even if she still has Mariah May and Luther, the gimmick has caught enough traction and got enough miles that an eventual babyface turn for Tony Storm is about to happen, especially depending on who is coming after her next. Whether Britt Baker comes back, whether it's another dance with Deonna Purrazzo, if it's another fight in the graveyard with Thunder Rosa, utilizing Thunder Rosa's introduction there for a minute. But it's going to be interesting to see. Next, we had the Willow Nightingale and Mercedes Moné contract signing. Willow, week in, week out, is surprisingly good on the stick. And she cut down a woman who is a 7-time former WWE champion, women's champion, in Mercedes Moné. Now, something that was brought up the other day on something in regards to Mercedes Moné was the fact that when Mercedes Moné comes out, she feels too WWE in her presentation. That she knows where the heart camera is, but there's too much Sasha Banks in Mercedes Moné, if that makes sense. Instead of Mercedes Moné being supposed to be the split off, the split personality of Mercedes Renardo. Contract signing obviously leads up to one of them taking a bump, that being Mercedes Moné taking a power bomb into the table with the contract. So the TBS championship match is set for Double or Nothing between Willow Nightingale, who will be accompanied more than likely by Chris Statlander and Stokely Hathaway, versus Mercedes Moné, the CEO of AEW, with her Gunther ripoff entrance theme. You had a Roderick Strong. Attached to him was the Undisputed Kingdom, and the Aerial Assassin, the Master of the Oz Cutter, the Rejector of the Tiger Driver 91, or the no longer user of the Tiger Driver 91, Will Ospreay. Now, it sets up the match between the two of them for the International Championship. I honestly see Ospreay taking the championship from Strong, but I don't discount that Strong isn't going to get some kind of interference from his faction mates there in the Undisputed Kingdom. It's going to be interesting to watch. I plan on watching at the end of the month myself, Saudi one day, Las Vegas the next. But that should be a hard-hitting match we all know Roderick Strong's resume and what he can do in a ring. Ospreay doesn't need me to talk him up between New Japan and other promotions that he's ever competed for in Britain. The proof about how good he is right there. Hook coming back from injury post the match there at Destiny, confronting the learning tree, Chris Jericho. Now, I'm going to kind of march along the same as a lot of other people. I'm not interested in it. I think Hook, and this is nothing against the FTW Championship. It's nothing. Retire the championship, allow Hook to get with Samoa Joe. Let Samoa Joe be Hook's learning tree. And, you know, kind of like how Taz did for Samoa Joe in TNA. And go from there. I mean, oh my God, if a Samoa Joe led Hook, who Samoa Joe is a learning tree unto himself in regards to his professional wrestling knowledge. Jesus Christ, just put them together already. Adam Copeland comes out. Obviously, he gets attacked by the House of Black. Malachi Black accepts the barbed wire steel cage match at Double or Nothing, but with a stipulation that if he accepts this match, Adam Copeland, after he takes off Copeland's wedding ring, which means more than likely you're going to see Beth Phoenix, if she still isn't under a contract with WWE, see Beth Phoenix make her appearance, Beth Copeland, in AEW so very soon. With that being said, Dynamite was kind of very hodgepodge. And that's fine. You don't always need a top tier, watch this match, watch that match, 5 stars throughout the show. It's okay to have a 2 or 3 star match, as long as the point is to build a story to the next match. And I think that's what a lot of people complain about, is storyline consistency with the AEW. I can see it. I believe in it. But, hopefully over time, this is what brings the casual audience and the hardcore audience that might be missing back to watching them, to getting their ratings back up. Everybody's speculating that Warner Brothers Discovery is not going to give as much of a sweet deal to AEW for this next couple year go around. We'll see. There's also belief that eventually, a la Peacock, we will see AEW pay-per-views on Max. So who knows? I am one that is going to sit here with bated breath and see how they do in regards to the media deals, because as WWE got this 10-year $500 million or $5 billion, so $500 million a year. Think about that. Raw is going to have a $500 million budget for 10 years each year. If AEW had a larger budget and a lot more cross-platform than just TBS TNT, it could probably be pretty nuts how things are going to get done. We'll see. Moving on from AEW over to Friday Night SmackDown. So it's, like I said, I was supposed to record this yesterday and life happens. I'm going to try to fly through SmackDown real quick. I thought SmackDown was a great show. I didn't agree with some things, but that's me. And I got the point. After listening to other people talk about it kind of really made you go, okay, blah, blah, blah. That's why they did it. Let's start with Bianca Belair and Tiffany Stratton. The future is bright for WWE. Everybody was alleging the last couple of hours before the show that, some hints from Montez Ford and Angela Dawkins playing with the internet that Bianca was pregnant. Apparently, that's not the case. But a non-pregnant Bianca Belair and Tiffany Stratton set that crowd on fire, put the show in a right frame of mind as far as excitement. And that Jacksonville crowd ate SmackDown up. It was really good to see them kind of continue that wave from Leon, in a sense. That crowds are getting more involved, or some of the crowds that watched Backlash are trying to step up to that French crowd. Eventually, it'll happen one day. We'll see. After that, we get a picture of Logan Paul showing up to Nick Aldis's office. And obviously, Nick Aldis walking out with LA Knight. Ergo, now we have Knight and Paul facing off against each other out in the hallway. A hint of things to come. Potential SummerSlam match in Cleveland. We'll see. After that, of course, you had Tama Tonga facing off against LA Knight. And then the surprise match of the week in regards to the finish, Tama Tonga goes over on LA Knight. I'm like, why? It kind of feels like you're putting Knight in Money in the Bank matches and world title matches and King of the Ring. And then I'm like, okay, where's the payoff for LA Knight? That was one of the first decisions I had an issue with until I listened. But then again, LA Knight's LA Knight. Whether he has a King of the Ring crown, a Money in the Bank briefcase, or championship attached to his waist, he still has the support of the fans, and the fans get more rabid about WWE potentially putting a title on him and keeping that groundswell on the internet going. And even in the arenas as well. Of course, after the match, LA Knight and Carmelo Hayes. Now Carmelo Hayes, a first round draft pick of SmackDown. They get to talking. LA Knight and Carmelo Hayes can talk, but LA Knight has got a little bit more time with the gift of gab in professional wrestling than Carmelo Hayes. So, seeds. Triple H is very good about planting seeds for future feuds. He is really good about it. It's amazing and remarkable how good Triple H and this booking team has made their talent since Vince retired and Vince left TKO, and Vince no longer having control over the pencil. Now Hunter or Paul has the pencil. Paul sat under the learning tree of Dusty Rhodes and Ric Flair. Ric Flair was a booker too. People forget that. There's going to be mistakes that Paul Levesque still makes in regards to what he does, but this is not the time to talk about it. We'll talk about it in a later podcast. Next is the Cody Rhodes, Logan Paul, what we thought was going to be champion versus champion. Now, mind you, still it is champion versus champion, but only one championship is going to be up on the line next week in Saudi, that being the undisputed WWE Championship. I kind of get the logic of why it is that way, because Cody Rhodes is going to be with WWE long enough. He will probably eventually be a Grand Slam champion one of these days, no doubt. And Logan Paul, making him a credible threat in the heavyweight division against its top champion. I expect that match to shock the world and how good it's going to be between Cody Rhodes and Logan Paul. Logan Paul shines, and part of it is his partner in the ring, and the other part is he is actually taken to polishing his craft. Go from celebrity influencer, podcaster, blah blah blah, into a credible professional wrestler is not easy. I think only maybe Pat McAfee has been able to do it well enough. Same thing with Bad Bunny. But Logan Paul weasels the U.S. Championship out of the match, leaving the champion versus champion excursion, like I said, to be for the World Heavyweight, or excuse me, the undisputed WWE Championship. Now, I think it was Wade Barrett who, it was Cody initially, and then Wade Barrett brought it up. The broccoli-haired entourage that came with the attorney and with, I believe these are supposed to be faux members of Logan's Impulsive crew. They're independent wrestlers that are there to serve, take the bumps. But broccoli-haired dude ends up through a table, a la a power bomb from Cody Rhodes. So Cody and Willow, they have some power bomb through a table experience. One's with her opponent, the other's with the lackey. It was just fine, the segment. Then they moved to Nia Jax and Jade Cargill. I get why Nia is going against Bianca. This is because you don't want to ruin the magic, per se, of going early to a Jade Cargill Bianca Belair match, because that's what they're building up to, likely for either Royal Rumble or the likeliest of spots, WrestleMania next year in Vegas. Plus, the interaction with Jade's daughter and the disqualification. Now, I will say that I didn't like the finish initially, but then I sat there and I listened. And I read some of the reactions on Twitter and other places, and came around to the fact that it was the right decision. DQ does not necessarily make Jade weak. It was a heat of the moment kind of finish where, she had just been sideswiped a little bit with the chair, causing her to get cut on the right side of her face. But at the end of the day, Jade Cargill, after defending the honor of her daughter and everything else, still, and even in the aftermatch segment, looked strong. And there was a worked stiffness between those two because they are really strong women. I mean, Jade Cargill cleanly lifted Nia Jax off the ground and spinebuster her at the beginning of the match. So that match, if given longer time on a PLE, could be a really good match and kind of really show you the progression of Jade Cargill, and also with training with Natalia and Charlotte Flair and probably other members of the company between Raw and SmackDown, now you're really seeing Nia Jax's growth from when she left NXT all these many years later to now under the Paul Levesque regime, looking like the polished monster heel that she should look like. So we have Nia Jax facing Bianca Belair next Friday in Saudi for the SmackDown regional final for the women. Moving on to the main event and hopefully the close of this show, because we're burgeoning on an hour and a half talking here. You had, almost forgot a match. You had a short match between DIY and Legado. Now, of course, everybody got their paces in. You're going to see DIY eventually facing Grayson Waller and Austin Theory for the WWE World Tag Team Championships, which hopefully does not mean DIY is splitting, even though the hints have been there. Hopefully means that DIY is going to have actually a decent championship run eventually on SmackDown. And eventually we'll see the split of Grayson Waller and Austin Theory. I could actually see Waller taking the face turn and Theory staying heel, but I believe the push is to eventually make Austin Theory a babyface again, or a babyface in general, like he was in Evolve, and have those two face each other over the summer. That being said, Legado got their paces in, interference from Elektra Lopez and some spot moves from Carrillo and Garza. But it was a short match to fill up some time before the main event. DIY won. And I don't know if we're going to see the tag match at SmackDown next weekend, or if they're waiting for Saudi in regards to King and Queen of the Ring, or eventually having this match at Clash at the Castle in June, which is a more potential likelihood, since the way they're pacing pay-per-views is about every 2 to 4 weeks from the previous one. 2, 3 weeks, or 4 weeks from the previous one. I believe WWE is running 16 PLEs this year. I might be wrong, but I think they're going to lean more to DIY and A-Town Down Under facing each other at Clash at the Castle. Now to close up this podcast, we move on to Carmelo Hayes and Randy Orton for the second and final spot in the SmackDown Men's Regional Final, facing against Randy Orton. Randy Orton, what can be said about Randy Orton? 14-time World Heavyweight Champion, Intercontinental Champion, United States Champion, Tag Team Champion, Grand Slam winner. Is it going to be weird to see Randy Orton potentially as a Grand Slam or as a King of the Ring? No. The fact that Tama Tonga is going to face off against the winner of this match, which I'm going to get to here in a minute, is crazy. I honestly thought it was going to be LA Knight and Randy Orton, or Kevin Owens and Randy Orton. Boy, was I wrong. Randy Orton and Carmelo Hayes had a good 20-minute match. Really good 20-minute match. Yes, Hayes lost, and has lost to the second main eventer in 3 weeks. But these matches are showcasing Carmelo Hayes' talent and the reason why he was the number one draft pick. Randy Orton, the older statesman now, after the opening, really showed you why he is the apex predator, the Viper. Because when you try to bite at him, he bites back pretty damn hard. He can be stiff, he can move, he can come off the top rope. So at 40-something years old, Randy Orton isn't without his differing skill sets either. I mean, I remember when Randy Orton's finishing move was a crossbody off the top rope. If that tells you anything. Carmelo Hayes is the future, or one of the future pieces, along with the Braun Breaker and others, to when this generation of older talent decide to step aside. WWE's in good hands. I know people are like, well, after Cody Rhodes and Randy and all them, WWE's done. No. The beauty of the Performance Center, the fact that the Performance Center exists, WWE thought about the long term. I mean, I am thankful for Triple H to put that idea in Vince's head to build that. It has only proved its worth and then some in regards to the talent that it cultivates and brings to our television screens and to arenas around the world. Then the Bloodline comes out after Randy hits that RKO out of nowhere. And I love the springboard into the RKO finish and then the bump Carmelo took after reacting to the RKO. Harken back to a little bit of CM Punk when I think it was WrestleMania. I think it was WrestleMania 27. I think it was WrestleMania 27 or 26 or something. No, 27. When CM Punk, or was it SummerSlam? I might be wrong. But when Orton caught Punk off a springboard into the RKO. And then, yes, Tama Tonga and the new bloodline, or the new blood, shows up. And Randy gets a stick. And if anybody knows anything about Randy Orton, the man can talk. And talk he did. He just straight up said what he needed to say, told him, hey, I'm coming for you. I'm not afraid of you. And told Tama Tonga to pretty much be ready for a fight because I'm going to kick your ass. Like I said, 14-time world champion, the apex predator, the Viper, the legend killer. Man still has some legends to kill. Here you and me. Randy, I would not be shocked at the end result, the final match at King of the Ring on Saturday is Gunther versus Randy Orton. I would not be shocked. That being said, with any alibis, I don't believe I have any. It's just a pleasure to be able to talk wrestling and to hopefully inspire others to watch the product. Also to kind of, know our role. Shout out to The Rock. In regards to what we are to the wrestling industry, which is fans, and not kind of overstepping our welcome as professional wrestling fans. We should be mindful of that. Let's see here. Was there any other alibis? No, but I'm going to preface this once again. If you're an independent wrestler, valet, company that needs a little bit of promotion, whether in this Texas or the stateside area, you just want to get on here and talk with me about professional wrestling, kind of give you your story, anything else, as well, I'm looking for a tag team partner, somebody that I can chew the fat with Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays here on From the Cheap Seats Wrestling Podcast. I'm trying to make this profitable, get a bigger computer with a lot more memory long term. And probably, change this up a little bit more to kind of make it more studio-ish, for lack of a better term. That being said, it is 1 hour and 35 minutes and 20 seconds into this podcast, and you have listened to yet again another amazing, astounding. I'm not going to try to McAfee thesaurus anything with the rest of this. Another amazing From the Cheap Seats Wrestling Podcast. My name is Chris Branson. Please like on X at FCTS Podcast and subscribe on YouTube to the channel with the same name. That being said, I hope you have a great weekend, and I will see you all on Monday to preview Monday Night Raw and talk about any other scuttlebutt that happens from this weekend. Have a great Saturday.